A very good evening and welcome to the news tonight here on Sabha TV. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and in the next 30 minutes I'll be getting you the day's top stories from India and across the world. So let's start with the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi promises reforms will continue at the Delhi Economics Conclave, asserts that the economy has performed better on all parameters since his government came to power. After former servicemen threatened to return medals across the country over Aura protests, Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar assures notification of the scheme before Diwali. Vice President Ansari calls India a guiding light of the spirit of pluralism and tolerance, while former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh warns that checks on freedom of speech will affect economic growth. Recommending a uniform civil code, the Gujarat High Court seeks change in Muslim personal law, says polygamy provision is being misused for selfish reasons. And underworld don Chota Rajan is finally brought to Delhi. Mumbai police claims decision to hand over cases to the CBI will demoralize the force. But first, painting a promising picture of the future, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the country is headed in the right direction. Not only did he praise his government's efforts at economic reforms, the Prime Minister also commended the fight against the black money menace. Here's a report from the Delhi Economics Conclave.
Adopting a positive approach on the economy, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said the economy has performed better on all parameters since his government came to power.
By almost every major economic indicator, India is doing better than when we took office 17 months ago. GDP growth is up and inflation is down. Foreign investment is up and current account deficit is down. Revenues are up and interest rates are down. The fiscal deficit is down and the rupee is stable.
While inaugurating the Delhi Economics Conclave 2015, the Prime Minister also promised that reforms would continue and that these would be inclusive. He also praised his government's efforts in bringing back black money stashed abroad.
Reform is not an end in itself. Reform for me is just a way station on the long journey to the destination. The destination is transformation of India. Therefore, reform to transform and reforming to transform is a marathon, not a sprint.
Praising his government, Modi said it had embarked on a course of fiscal consolidation. He particularly praised the Jan Dhan Yojana, the Aadhaar card scheme and the Mudra initiative. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In other news, Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar has announced that the one rank, one pension scheme will be implemented before Diwali next week. The central government will come out with a formal notification next week once the model code ends. His announcement came on a day when ex-servicemen threatened to return their medals across the country in protest against delay in implementation of the scheme. Though the government had announced OROP scheme on the 5th of September, a section of the veterans had continued their protests, claiming several shortcomings in the proposed scheme.
आपको मालूम है दिवाली के पहले हो जाएगा दिवाली से पहले हो जाएगा सर होना चाहिए.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh has joined the debate on intolerance in an event to mark the 125th anniversary of India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. The former Prime Minister cautioned the country against creating an impression of intolerance. He also said that doing so would have an adverse impact on the economy.
Suppression of dissent or free speech poses a grave danger for economic development as well.
Former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh joining the debate on intolerance, warning that any attempt to curb the freedom of speech will affect the economic growth of the country. Speaking at a conference in New Delhi on Friday, the former Prime Minister expressed concern over recent incidents of murder of rationalists and thinkers. Deploring the act, Singh said such incidents are an assault on the nation.
The assault or murder of thinkers for no more than disagreement with their views or because of the food they eat or their caste cannot be justified on any ground, nor can the suppression of the right to dissent be allowed.
Congress leaders rallied behind the former Prime Minister, blaming the BJP for the prevailing atmosphere in the country. The BJP, however, was quick to retort.
Very selective in terms of the criticism that they are making. And coming from Dr. Manmohan Singh, it comes as a surprise. Because one would expect he would have also a comment on the murder of Mr. Kulbargi, because there is a Congress government there. There is the murder of also Mr. Dabolkar. That was also a Congress government. So why this selective view?
Earlier in the day, on his way back from Bali, Vice President Muhammad Hamid Ansari also reiterated India's commitment to religious tolerance and plurality.
Our commitment to plurality, to religious tolerance is self-evident. It is written down in the constitutional text as fundamental rights. It has been repeated again and again by the highest courts in the land.
The Vice President also added that many countries actually learned from India about the benefits of a plural society. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Gujarat High Court has said that Muslims cannot be booked for an offence of polygamy under the Indian Penal Code as it is permissible in Islamic laws. But the court observed that the Holy Book was being misinterpreted by men to have more than one wife. The court also recommended an amendment of Muslim personal law, saying that the provision of polygamy was being misused for selfish reasons. The order came on a plea moved by a man facing bigamy charges after marrying for a second time without taking his first wife's consent. The court, however, quashed the charges since the second nikah was valid as per Muslim personal law and said that the man could not be prosecuted for bigamy. Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Hilal Ahmed, who's a fellow at CSDS, joining us, in fact, from the capital. Hilal, first of all, how do we see the Muslim Personal Law Board reacting to the Gujarat High Court as well, talking about a UCC, the Uniform Civil Code? Because just about last week or a few days back, in fact, the Supreme Court too had, in fact, asked the government to make up its mind on it.
Sorry, I didn't get your point. I didn't hear you properly. Can you repeat the question again?
Yes, Hilal, I was asking that it's not just the Gujarat High Court, but the Supreme Court as well has talked about the Uniform Civil Code, bringing back that debate on the forefront. How is the Muslim Personal Law Board reacting to this, especially today's news?
I think it is actually a mixed sort of a judgment. On the one hand, the court takes a very straightforward legal position that because we have the existence of various personal laws in the country, therefore, according to the Muslim personal law, it is permissible to have more than one wife. But at the same time, the court also observed, which in my view is going to be very, very significant, that it is actually a misinterpretation of religious text, in this case the Quran. The question you just asked about the reaction of Muslim Personal Law Board, in my view, I think they have taken a rather conservative view since the Shah Banu case that any intervention in their view or their understanding of Quran and Shariat is not permissible. I think again, if we really need to think the question of gender justice among Muslims, I think it is very important to get rid of these kind of statement and this kind of position. Very recently, there are two evidences which I would like to mention here.
Yes.
One is that Muslim Mahila Mukti Morcha, this is actually an organization of Muslim women. They conducted a survey in 7 states, and it's a very interesting survey. They came out with the finding that Muslim women actually do not want triple talaq at all. But interestingly, they want some kind of a reform within the system. They are not claiming that we should go for UCC or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
They are saying that there is a possibility of liberal interpretation or gender just interpretation of the Quran. I think this judgment and the previous observation of the Supreme Court is indicating towards that. But I would also like to mention one thing, that we have to make a distinction between political discourse and legal discourse.
Yes, that's
Supreme
right.
Court judgment as well as Gujarat High Court judgment should be seen in relation to the legal discourse on UCC in the country, and it should not be, read in the wider debates which are there in the public discourse,
Yes.
which are more political in nature.
Absolutely. And do you think now, citing all these examples that you are, Hilal, that the time is perhaps ripe at the moment to talk about a UCC? Or do you think with, anyway, this whole wave of so-called intolerance that's going around in the country, a government trying to look into a UCC, a Uniform Civil Code, could be construed the wrong way?
I think that, you cannot get rid of politics at all.
Yes.
You have to recognize the existence of politics in this country. And there is an interesting debate on UCC. What we really actually ignore is that UCC is something on which we have a very strong position of various women's organization. I think gender justice should be the first point.
Yes.
And UCC, the question of stakeholders are important in this case. If we are going to have a national debate on this question, I think Muslim Personal Law Board, VHP, RSS and organizations like this should not be, invited as a representative of certain communities. I think the most important question is that, there are Muslim women groups.
Yes.
They should be invited as a stakeholder in order to make this, this debate more meaningful. Otherwise, and, this is also true because if you look at the position of various political parties,
Yes.
they would always like to make certain sort of ambiguities. UCC debate is not imposing Hindu law on other communities. That openness should be, in the public domain.
Yes. All right. We'll have to wait and see, of course, what eventually happens. But this debate will continue. Thanks so much for the moment, though, Hilal, for joining us on this story. On to other news. An underworld don, Chota Rajan, was finally brought to Delhi early this morning from Indonesia. He will now face trial in various criminal cases registered against him. But the government's decision to hand over all the cases to the CBI assumed political overtones. Here are the details.
After being on the run for the last 27 years, Chota Rajan was finally brought back from Indonesia late last night. A joint team headed by CBI officials brought him to Delhi early on Friday morning in an Indian Air Force aircraft from Bali. Under tight security cover, Rajan was taken to the CBI headquarters where he will be kept for questioning. He will now be tried in over 70 cases of murder, extortion and drug smuggling. However, authorities are tight-lipped about the process. There is no clarity on whether Rajan will be taken to Mumbai at all.
Is one agency handling the issue will always help the case, cracking anything if need be. So it's good, and I don't think that we should be making, all kind of comments and disclosing about the procedure.
देखिए अभी फिलहाल मेरे पास कोई ऐसी जानकारी नहीं है जो मैं आपके साथ शेयर कर सकूं. जो भी आवश्यक होगा वो किया जाएगा.
Most of the cases for which Rajan will face trial are in Mumbai. Earlier, Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis had claimed that Rajan will be kept under the supervision of the Mumbai police at the Arthur Road jail. He even ordered setting up a special cell for Rajan. But the government's decision to let CBI handle all his cases has reportedly left the state police unhappy. Opposition parties also slammed the decision.
Transferring case to CBI, first Sina Bora case, now Rajan cases, it is very unfortunate. This is all shocking decision. This kind of a showing non-confidence on Mumbai police, it will be resulting a very havoc situation in Mumbai.
सारे केसेस अगर सीबीआई हैंडल करेगी तो पुलिस का काम क्या है? मुझे लगता है मुंबई पुलिस की जो कैपेबिलिटी है, जो उसकी सक्षमता है, उसके ऊपर बहुत बड़ा सवाल उठा रही है केंद्र सरकार.
Mumbai police is very professional police force. There could be some element, very few element, who might be having that kind of the affiliation, either with Chota Rajan or either with Daud gang. It does not mean that Chota Rajan will not be safe.
CBI doesn't have the facilities or the manpower to take up so many cases. And why should it be taken up? After all, the states have very competent agencies.
Earlier, Rajan had claimed threat to his life if he was handed over to Mumbai police because of his animosity with underworld don Dawood Ibrahim. There have been attempts on Rajan by Dawood's aides after the two dons split over the 1993 Mumbai blasts. The Central Investigation Agency now hopes to get more out from Rajan on Dawood's whereabouts from his former aide.
I think it depends what he tells the investigators, especially about Dawood. The effort to extradite him have been only with the effort to with an attempt to reach Dawood. CBI will interrogate every case unless the court orders it.
Rajan was living incognito in Australia before he was nabbed in Bali last month. The 55-year-old underworld don is on dialysis as both his kidneys are not working. With inputs from Vipin Chauhan, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And with that, let's get you an update of other national news updates in Nationwide. The centre has cancelled Greenpeace International's license to operate. It has been given 30 days to shut down operations. Financial fraud and falsification of data have been cited as the reasons behind the action. But Greenpeace denied any wrongdoing and claimed that the closure was another attempt by the government to silence free speech. The Delhi High Court today dismissed a petition seeking the enactment of a law prohibiting cow slaughter and sale of beef across Delhi and the National Capital Region. The petition was dismissed after the AAP government informed the court that there exists a law on cattle protection in Delhi. Patidar leader Hardik Patel did not get any assistance from the Supreme Court today when it ruled that investigation into his sedition case should continue. The Gujarat police has been asked to complete the investigation in a month and a half. The next hearing will be on the 5th of January. The CBI today moved the Supreme Court seeking a review of the court's verdict of the Opar cinema fire case that claimed 60 victims 18 years ago. The top court had held owners of the cinema complex guilty but said they did not serve further jail time. The CBI said that justice was not served. Without a quick break here, but still ahead, we've got international news, and British investigators claim that a bomb in the hold blew up the Russian plane over Egypt.
Sedition case against a union minister quashed by the Allahabad High Court. Is this law only being used to silence critics? Has the time come to drop it? Watch the big picture at 9:30 p.m. only on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Now, Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari met his Chinese counterpart Li Yanqiu at Hyderabad House in Delhi on Friday. The two leaders discussed a range of issues. After the delegation-level talks, the two sides also signed two agreements. While the pact in water resources was the renewal of an agreement dealing with sharing hydrological data on Satluj, there was a cultural agreement as well. Under this, India will hold an art exhibition from the Gupta period known as India's Golden Period. Li is the first Chinese vice president to visit India in over 6 decades.
The visit of the Chinese vice president is part of the intensification of high-level exchanges between India and China. Since the formation of the new government in May 2014, Prime Minister Modi has met President Xi Jinping 5 times and Premier Li Keqiang twice. Vice President Shri Hamid Ansari had paid a visit to China in June 2014.
After blaming India on global platform for calling off talks and ceasefire violations, Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has expressed eagerness to resume dialogue with India. Sharif ruled out the possibility of a war with India, emphasizing that use of force could only worsen the situation. His remarks came only days after Sharif's visit to the US, where Pakistan got a rap on tackling terror. This is Sharif's first outreach after asking US for help to resume talks. In a meeting with Pakistani President Mymon Hussain, Sharif spoke out about resolving all outstanding issues with India through dialogue. Sharif said his government desired friendly ties with India, all its neighbours and the world at large for sustainable development. Meanwhile, China and Vietnam have pledged to build mutual trust and friendship amid recent tensions over the dispute in the South China Sea. They have agreed to maintain peace and refrain from any provocations to find a lasting solution to the territorial disputes.
At the end of his state visit to Vietnam, Chinese President Xi Jinping striking a reconciliatory note. In his talks with Vietnamese Premier Nguyen Thanh Dung, Xi stressed that China-Vietnam relations hold strategic importance. Both sides also agreed to step up dialogue and maintain peace in the disputed South China Sea. Xi said they would avoid any provocative actions that could further complicate the situation.
国际的地区环境正在发生深刻复杂的变化，中越各自面临的机遇和挑战都在增多，双方应该增进友好互信，加强团结合作，促进共同发展。
In a speech to Vietnam's National Assembly, Xi said the two nations were good socialist neighbours which should be able to survive any disruption in relations. Xi called for a long-term and an acceptable solution to the territorial disputes. Vietnam is willing to make joint efforts in maritime cooperation and maintain frequent high-level exchanges.
将继续秉承亲诚惠容的理念，深化包括越南在内的周边国家的互利合作和互联互通，永远做社会主义国家的亲密同志，永远做发展中国家的可靠朋友和真诚伙伴。
China's move to assert control by reclaiming land on the disputed islands has fueled resentment with Vietnam and other neighbours. The recent sparring between Beijing and Washington over freedom of navigation has put Vietnam in a tricky spot. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, as campaigning draws to a close, Myanmar gears up for a historic election on Sunday. More than 30 million people are eligible to vote in what would be their first ever chance to have a say in their nation's future. Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy is expected to make major gains, but it is far from certain that it will win an outright majority.
After being under the junta's rule for the past 50 years, Myanmar will hope to take its first step towards electing a democratic government on Sunday. European Union election observers inspected polling stations and ballot boxes on Friday. Opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi called on the Burmese people and the overseas observers to monitor the election and ensure it is carried out in a fair and free fashion.
We observe the advance voting today. We will observe the voting on polling day itself, and we will be present also, of course, for the counting and for the results, because that is a part of the electoral process as well.
Around 30 million of Myanmar's population is registered to cast their ballot. Suu Kyi is the favourite of many voters and her party is expected to do well in the polls, but she is banned by the constitution from becoming the president. However, she said that she will be above the president if her party wins.
I have not said we're going to win. I have said if we are win and the NLD forms a government, I will be above the president. It's a very simple message.
The general election is the first since a quasi-civilian government took power in 2011. It is widely regarded as a referendum on Myanmar's reform process. However, there's still a long way to go until the country becomes fully democratic, with the army granted 25% of the parliamentary seats under the constitution. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now let's take you through some more international news updates in Global Buzz. UK investigators believe a bomb in the hold caused a Russian airliner to crash in Egypt. They are suspecting that the bomb was planted before the plane took off. The British government has suspended all flights connecting Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh 2 days ago. It said that it was working with airlines and Egyptian authorities to put in place additional security and screening measures to allow Britons to get back home. At least 15 people were killed when a dam collapsed in Brazil and released a torrential flow of water and mud into the town of Bento Rodrigues. According to reports, around 45 people were missing, including 30 who were working on the dam at the moment. Germany's ruling coalition parties have agreed to speed up the asylum process as the influx of migrants has hit a record high in Europe. The crisis has caused political turmoil across the EU, with member states disagreeing about how to deal with the situation. Germany expects to receive at least 800,000 asylum seekers this year. Time for another quick break here, but still ahead, we're getting a cricket action in the first test at Mohali. India snatched the initiative. Details ahead.
Earthquake-prone country in India, we require a lighter weight building to resist the earthquake as well as the blast force. This foam has a very different characteristics of energy absorption, which gives you strength under the case of blast and impact.
Watch Eureka with Dr. M.D. Goel, scientist at CSIR Neeri, on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back to the news tonight. Let's get you some cricket action now. India, in fact, took a comprehensive lead of 142 runs against South Africa on day 2 of the first test at Mohali. With Pujara and Kohli at the crease, India scored 125 for the loss of 2 wickets in the second innings at the end of day 2. India lost the first wicket at 9, but an 86-run partnership between Murli Vijay and Cheteshwar Pujara has consolidated its position. Earlier, Ravichandran Ashwin's 5-wicket haul helped India restrict the visitors to just 184 runs in their first innings. Left-arm spinner Ravindra Jadeja then took 3 wickets, while leg spinner Amit Mishra picked up the other 2. For South Africa, AB de Villiers was the top scorer with 63 runs. Hashim Amla made 43 and Dean Elgar scored 37. And time now for some more sports news in Sports Beat. World number 2 Roger Federer was knocked out of the Paris Masters after falling in the third round to American John Isner. Federer lost in 3 sets, 7-6, 3-6, 7-6. However, world number 1 Novak Djokovic stayed on course for a third title with a straight set victory over Gilles Simon. Spaniard Rafael Nadal, meanwhile, advanced to the Paris Masters quarter-finals. Nadal survived a scare against South Africa's Kevin Anderson while he was a point away from defeat. But he came alive late in the second set to score a 4-6, 7-6, 6-2 victory. Nadal will next face Swiss at Stanislas Wawrinka in Friday's last quarter-final. Liverpool came close to qualify for the last 32 of the Europa League with a 1-0 victory over Rubin Kazan. Jordan Ibe scored his first goal for the club in the 52nd minute. Liverpool now trail Group B leaders Sion by 2 points. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. From the entire team here, good night and have a great weekend.